The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched out like a cathedral made of stars. Ambassador Hyanwu walked slowly across the smooth crystal floor. His simple black suit looking plain next to the colorful robes and armor of other species. Above him, the dome ceiling showed the real-time view of space outside, where massive alien ships hung like sleeping giants. Today would change everything. He knew it. Even if the others did not. The emergency session had been called after reports came from the Outer Rim territories. Something dark was coming. Ships that did not reflect light. Vessels that moved in perfect formation without any communication. Signals. The scouts called them the Void Swarm, and they were heading toward the heart of the galaxy. Hyanwu took his seat at the circular table. The chair was designed for human size, but it felt small compared to the massive seats around him. To his left sat Commander Vextel of the Luxari Collective. The crystal being's body caught the light and threw rainbows across the table. Each facet of his form pulsed with inner energy that could power a small city. Human, Vextel's voice rang like wind chimes in a storm. I am surprised you came to this meeting. Surely your species should be preparing evacuation ships instead of pretending to discuss military strategy. Admiral Corvash of the Volthan Empire laughed, the sound like electricity crackling through metal. His energy form shifted from blue to purple as his amusement grew. The primitive ones always think they can help in real battles. It is almost cute. Hyanwu smiled politely and said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence was often the best response to insults. Let them think what they wanted to think. The meeting began when Chancellor Nextar of the Machine Collective called for order. The robot's voice boomed through speakers hidden in the walls. We face a threat unlike any before. The Void Swarm has destroyed 3 colony worlds. Our best senses cannot penetrate their technology. We must work together. One by one, each species began to share what they could offer for the coming battle. The Luxari spoke of crystal ships that could focus starlight into weapons. Their dreadnoughts could crack moons with a single beam. The Volthan boasted about energy vessels that moved faster than light itself. They could be anywhere in the galaxy in moments. The Machine Collective showed holographic displays of their robot fleets. Thousands of metal warriors that felt no fear and needed no rest. Each one was armed with weapons that could cut through any armor. The Aquatic Federation spoke of their living ships that could repair themselves even during battle. Bioengineered creatures the size of cities that grew new weapons as they fought. Finally, all eyes turned to Hyanwu. The small human sat quietly in his simple chair, hands folded on the table. The silence stretched out like a held breath. What can Earth offer? Chancellor Nextar asked. The robot's optical sensors focused on the human with what might have been. Curiosity. Hyanwu stood up slowly. We will deploy our heritage fleet. The reaction was immediate. Vextel's crystal form flickered with what looked like laughter. Your heritage fleet? You mean those metal boxes you call ships? Those ancient things with chemical rockets? We've seen human vessels, Admiral Corvash added. Crude construction, projectile weapons, technology that was old when our civilization was young. What could such primitive craft possibly do against the Void Swarm? Aquatic Federation representative, a being that looked like a walking tide pool, made bubbling sounds that translated as amusement. Perhaps they planned to ram the enemy ships. A brave but foolish gesture. Hyanwu remained calm. He had expected this reaction. Our ships may look old, but they have served us well. We have never lost a war. That is because you've never fought a real war, Vextel said. His crystal body pulsed brighter with contempt. Your species fights among yourselves with simple weapons. This is different. This is galactic warfare. The Void Swarm destroyed the Kethran Defense Force in minutes. Admiral Corvash added. The Kethran had plasma cannons that could boil oceans. If such weapons failed, what hope do human projectile throwers have? Chancellor, Nexstar processed this information through multiple data cores. Perhaps the humans should focus on evacuation. Their primitive ships might serve as refugee transports. Hyan-Wu pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. A holographic star map appeared, showing fleet positions across the galaxy. Our heritage fleet will take position here, he said, pointing to a section of empty space between star systems. We will coordinate with your forces as needed. The other representatives exchanged glances. The Luxari, Voltan, and Machine Collective had technologies that could bend space and time. They could communicate instantly across vast distances and move their fleets like chess pieces on a board. What could humans possibly coordinate with their simple radio signals? Very well, Chancellor Nexstar said after a moment of calculation. The human fleet may take whatever position they choose. We will not expect much from them. As the meeting continued, military plans were drawn up. Kana would form the front line with their crystal dreadnoughts. Atana, the Vothan energy fleets, would strike fast and hard from multiple angles. The Machine Collective would provide support with their robot armies. The Aquatic Federation would handle supply lines with their living ships. The human contribution was marked on the battle plans. As a small note, Heritage Fleet, minimal combat capability, evacuation support if needed. When the meeting ended, the representatives began to leave. Vextal stopped next to Hyan-Wu's chair. Human, I do not wish to see your people destroyed needlessly. When this battle begins, keep your primitive ships far from the fighting. Let the real militaries handle this threat. I understand your concern, Hyan-Wu replied, but humans have survived every threat our world ever sent against us. H's, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, and countless wars. We are still here. This is not your small world, Admiral Corvash interrupted, his energy form crackling with impatience. This is the galaxy. Scale matters. Human, your little metal ships mean nothing here. Hyan-Wu nodded politely. Perhaps you are right. Apps. Scale does matter. As he walked toward the exit, the other representatives continued their discussions. They spoke of weapons that could destroy stars and shields that could stop black holes. Technologies beyond human understanding. None of them noticed the small smile on Hyan-Wu's face as he left the great hall. None of them wondered why a primitive species had earned a seat on the Galactic Council in the first place. None of them asked the right questions. Outside, the human transport waited. It looked exactly like what the aliens expected. Old, metal, visible welding seams, and chemical thrusters that glowed with orange flame. As it departed Nexus Prime, the other species barely gave it a second glance. The Heritage Fleet was waiting in the darkness between stars. And soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity really meant by obsolete. Captain So-Young stood on the bridge of the UES engine, watching the stars through the main view screen. Around her ship, thousands of other vessels hung in the empty space between solar systems, till anyone looking from the outside, they would see exactly what they expected to see. Old metal ships with rust stains along their hulls. Visible welding marks where repairs had been made over many years. Chemical rockets that glowed with orange flame when they moved. Radio antennas that looked like they belonged in a museum. Everything about the human fleet screamed one word: primitive. That was exactly the point. Status report, So-Young said to her bridge crew. Her voice was calm, but there was something in her tone that spoke of hidden depths, like still water. That runs deeper than it appears. Lieutenant Boram looked up from her station. Her fingers danced across what looked like simple buttons and switches. But her eyes held knowledge that went far beyond the crude controls she pretended to use. All ships report ready, Captain. Project Mirror is holding steady across the entire fleet. So-Young nodded. Project Mirror, was humanity's greatest secret and their greatest weapon. Every ship in the Heritage Fleet was wrapped in layers of holographic disguise so perfect that even close scans would show exactly what the aliens expected to find. Primitive human technology that barely worked. The truth was something else entirely. Engineer Tomlin climbed up from the lower deck, wiping his hands on a cloth stained with what looked like oil and grease. His uniform was dirty, his face smudged with what appeared to be the honest sweat of a man keeping old machines running. But his eyes were sharp, and when he spoke, carried the weight of someone who understood technologies that could reshape reality itself. Final checks complete, he reported. Every fake rust patch is perfect. Every simulated system failure is ready to activate on command. The quantum tunneling torpedoes are loaded and disguised as chemical rockets. The gravity manipulation drives are hidden behind our chemical thruster displays. Young walked to the tactical display at the center of the bridge. 2 alien sensors. It would look like a simple flat screen showing basic ship positions. In reality, it was a window into dimensional spaces that most species could not even imagine. The display showed the true positions of every human ship, their real capabilities, and the hidden weapons that could crack planets like eggs. How long until the alien fleets reach their positions? She asked. The Luxari crystal ships will be in position in 6 hours, Bjorn replied. The Vulcan energy fleets are already moving to their attack coordinates. The Machine Collective is deploying their robot armies across 3 sectors. Dongmen laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. They think we are the backup plan. It's the last resort when their advanced weapons fail. Let them think that, So Young said. Admiral Kite has made it clear. We'll let them underestimate us until the moment comes to show them what humans really are. She activated the ship's communication system. 2 outside observers. It would look like she was using a simple radio transmitter, the kind of technology that most galactic civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. In reality, she was opening a quantum channel that connected instantly to every human ship across the fleet, regardless of distance or interference. This is Captain So Young to all Heritage Fleet vessels, she began. You know why we are here? You know what we face? The Void Swarm represents a threat that could destroy everything we have built. But more importantly, this is our chance to show the galaxy who we really are. Throughout the fleet, captains and crews listened on bridges that looked like a museum. Pieces but contained technology that could reshape stars. The used Busan, whose hull looked like it had been patched together from scrap metal, actually contained fusion reactors so advanced they could power entire solar systems. The UES Daegu, which appeared to be held together with wire and prayer, secretly housed artificial intelligence systems that made the Machine Collective look like pocket calculators. Remember your training, So Young continued. Every system has 2 faces, the one they see and the one that wins wars. Stay in character until the order comes. Let them think we are weak. Let them think we are helpless. God, let them learn the hard way that there is a difference between looking primitive and being primitive. Captain Minho of the EU Sol activated his own communicator. His bridge looked like something from humanity's early space age, complete with analog dials and switches that seemed to belong in an antique shop. But beneath that carefully maintained exterior, his ship contained weapons that could delete matter from existence itself. All ships, this is Sol Actual, he transmitted. Remember, we are not just fighting for humanity today. We are fighting for the right to be underestimated. That has been our greatest advantage for decades, and we will not give it up now. Engineer Yunji worked in the depths of the UES Jeju, surrounded by machinery that looked like it came from humanity's industrial age. Pipes and valves, gauges, and mechanical controls, everything covered in a layer of grime that suggested constant maintenance just to keep things running. But her hands moved with the precision of someone working with technologies that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. She activated the fleet's true defensive systems. The ones hidden so deep within each ship that even detailed scans would never find them. Adaptive metamaterials that could shift and flow like liquid metal. Reality anchors that could lock space itself into whatever shape they needed. Temporal shields that could make attacks happen before they were fired or after they were forgotten. All of it invisible. All of it disguised. All of it waiting. Admiral Jae-soon appeared on the quantum communication channel from his flagship, the USS Gwangju. The ship looked like a relic from humanity's first attempts at space travel, complete with external fuel tanks and mechanical joints that seemed ready to fall apart. In reality, it was a fortress that could survive the death of stars. Final briefing, he announced. The alien fleets think they are carrying the real weight of this battle. They think we are here to provide backup, or perhaps to evacuate civilians when their advanced weapons fail. They look at our ships and see exactly what we want them to see. He paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of vessels. But we know the truth. We know what human ships can really do. We know what human determination really means. We have been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars and decided they would be ours. The communication channel filled with quiet acknowledgments from across the fleet. Captains who looked like maintenance workers, engineers who appeared to be mechanics keeping ancient machines running, weapons officers whose stations looked like they came from museums, all of them hiding the truth of what humanity had become. Remember, Admiral Jae-soon concluded, we are not the youngest species in the galaxy. We are not the most advanced, but we are the most dangerous, precisely because no one knows how dangerous we really are. The Heritage Fleet waited in the darkness between stars, looking for all the world like a collection of antiques that somehow still flew. Soon, the galaxy would learn that old did not mean weak, and primitive did not mean helpless. Soon, they would learn what it meant to fight humans. The Helix Nebula had been a beautiful sight for thousands of years. Swirling clouds of gas and dust painted the void in colors that had no names. Stars were being born in its depths, their light filtering through cosmic veils to create patterns that poets across the galaxy had tried to capture in words. Today, it would become a battlefield. Lieutenant Borum watched the tactical display on the bridge of the UES Engine. The screen showed her what looked like a simple radar readout, the kind that human ships had used for centuries. But her trained eyes could read the hidden information flowing beneath the surface. Quantum signatures, dimensional fluctuations, and energy patterns that most species could not even detect. Contact, she announced. Void swarm emerging from dark space, bearing 27 Mark IV. Captain Soyoung moved to stand beside her. Through the view screen, space itself seemed to tear open like fabric being cut with a knife, from the wound. In reality, ships began to emerge, but these were not ships in any sense that the galaxy understood. The void vessels seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. They moved without any visible engines, gliding through space like shadows given form. Their hulls were black, but it was not the black of paint or metal. It was the black of empty space itself, of the gaps between stars where nothing existed. How many? Soyoung asked. Borum's fingers moved, across controls that looked like simple switches but were actually quantum interfaces. Sensors are having trouble getting exact counts. The T's seem to phase in and out of normal space. At least 300, possibly more. Across the nebula, the alien fleets moved into position. The Luxari crystal ships came first, their faceted hulls catching the light of nearby stars and throwing it back in brilliant displays. Each vessel was a work of art, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Their weapons could focus starlight itself into beams that could cut through anything. Commander Vextal transmitted on the open channel. Luxari Collective engaging the enemy. Observe how a real civilization fights. The crystal ships opened fire. Beams of concentrated starlight lanced out across the void, each one carrying enough energy to power a small planet. The light show was magnificent, turning the nebula into a display of colors that would have been beautiful if it were not so deadly. The beams struck the void ships and passed right through them. The dark vessels did not even slow down. It's possible. Vextel's voice crackled over the communication channel. Our weapons are touching them, but causing no damage. It is as if they are not fully real. The Vulcan Empire fleet arrived next, their energy ships moving faster than thought itself. Admiral Corvash led the charge, his vessels shifting through the electromagnetic spectrum as they prepared to attack. Blue light, red light, gamma radiation, and exotic energies that had no names in most languages. Vulcan forces engaging, Corvash announced, deploying full spectrum assault. The energy weapons struck the void ships like lightning hitting water. The attacks seemed to splash off the dark holes without leaving any mark. Some of the beams seemed to be absorbed entirely, disappearing into the black metal as if they had never existed. The machine collective robots came last, their metal forms moving in perfect formation. Chancellor Nexstar coordinated the attack from his command ship, processing battle data through multiple quantum cores. Collective forces deploying kinetic and plasma weapons, calculating optimal strike patterns. Thousands of metal warriors opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Plasma bolts, kinetic slugs, particle beams, and exotic matter projectiles filled the space between the fleets. The firepower was enough to destroy entire star systems. Again, the void ships seemed unaffected. Projectiles passed through them, like they were firing at ghosts. The plasma dissipated harmlessly against holes that should not have been able to exist in normal space. Then the void swarm began to fight back. The dark ships moved without any visible acceleration, suddenly appearing in new positions as if they had simply chosen to be elsewhere. Their weapons were not beams or projectiles, but something far worse. Reality itself seemed to crack around their targets. The first Luxari dreadnought simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was there, firing its crystal weapons at the enemy. The next moment, there was empty space where it had been, not destroyed, not exploded, but gone as if it had never been built. What happened to the eternal prism? Vextel demanded over the communication channel. Where did my ship go? More void ships moved into attack positions. A Vulcan energy cruiser tried to retreat, moving at near light speed. The dark vessel that pursued it seemed to ignore the laws of physics entirely, appearing directly in front of the fleeing ship. The cruiser hit something that was not there, and both ships vanished from sensors. "We are losing ships faster than we can count them," Admiral Corvash reported. His voice carried the first hint of panic that any of the alien commanders had shown. "Our weapons are not affecting them, but their weapons are removing our vessels from existence." The machine collective tried to adapt, pouring more firepower into their attacks. Robot ships moved in complex patterns, trying to confuse the enemy targeting systems. But the void ships moved through their formations like they were not there, touching metal holes and making entire vessels disappear. Chancellor Nexstar's voice came over the channel. "Mechanical and precise, as always. Collective forces have lost 37% combat effectiveness. Recommend immediate tactical withdrawal." In the distance, far from the main battle, the Human Heritage Fleet watched the carnage unfold. The UES engine hung in space like a piece of floating scrap metal, its hull scarred and patched, its engines producing the kind of chemical flame that belonged in a museum. Lieutenant Borum monitored the alien communications while running the human fleet's true sensor systems. The technology hidden inside her console could map the quantum signatures of the void ships, track their movement through dimensional space, and analyze their weapons in ways that the alien fleets could not imagine. "Captain," she said quietly, "I am reading the void ship signatures. They are using phase shift technology to avoid most attacks, but there are gaps in their defense patterns, specific frequency ranges where they have to maintain physical coherence. Captain So-young nodded. Can we exploit those gaps? Yes, but we would have to reveal our true capabilities. The quantum deletion torpedoes would work, but they did not look anything like the chemical rockets we are supposed to be using. So-young looked at the tactical display, watching as more alien ships vanished from the battle. The Luxari had lost half their fleet. The Voltan were in full retreat. The Machine Collective was trying to regroup, but their formation was falling. A part of their communication console crackled to life. It was Admiral Corvash, his energy form flickering with desperation. Human vessels, withdraw immediately. This is not a battle you can survive. Keep your primitive ships away from the combat zone. Commander Vextel's voice joined the channel. The human fleet must retreat. We cannot protect you from this enemy. Your simple weapons will be useless here. Captain So-young looked around her bridge. Her crew sat at stations that looked like they belonged in humanity's early space age, but their eyes held the knowledge of technologies that could reshape reality itself. She thought about the orders from Admiral Kitay, about the plan they had spent decades preparing for. Ballroom, she said finally, signal the fleet. Begin Phase 1. Borum's hands moved across controls that looked like simple buttons, but were actually quantum interfaces. All ships, this is Ancient Actual. Execute Phase 1. Show them our obsolete capabilities. Across the Heritage Fleet, human ships began to move. Their chemical rockets flared to life, producing visible flame trails that looked pathetically crude compared to the exotic engines of the alien vessels. They lumbered forward like ancient metal beasts, slow and clumsy, and apparently helpless. The void swarm barely noticed them. The dark ships were focused on the real threats. The advanced alien vessels with their exotic weapons and sophisticated technology. What could primitive human ships possibly do against enemies that could phase in and out of reality itself? Captain So-young smiled as her ship moved toward the battle zone. The aliens thought they were watching a suicide charge by a primitive species that did not understand the danger they faced. They were about to learn that humans understood danger better than any species in the galaxy. They were about to discover what it meant to fight a people who had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and decided they would not be victims anymore. The Heritage Fleet moved into attack position, and the real battle was about to begin. The first human rocket looked exactly like what everyone expected. It's a simple chemical projectile, trailing orange flame, as it moved through space at speeds that seemed laughably slow compared to the exotic weapons filling the battle zone. The Void ship, it was aimed to barely register the approaching threat, focused instead on a Luxari crystal dreadnought case that was desperately trying to retreat. Captain Minho watched from the bridge of the EU Sol as his torpedo closed the distance. His ship looked like a floating junkyard, its hull patched with different metals, and its systems held together with what appeared to be wire and hope. But his eyes tracked the weapon's progress through sensors that could map reality itself. Impact. In 3 seconds, his weapons officer reported, using controls that looked like they belonged in a museum, but were actually quantum interfaces disguised as analog switches. The chemical rocket struck the Void ship dead center. The dark vessel simply vanished, not destroyed in an explosion of fire and debris, not cracked apart by kinetic force. It was erased from existence as completely as if it had never been built. The space where it had been was empty, not even containing the particles that should have remained after any normal weapon impact. Commander Vextel's voice crackled over the communication channel. What just happened? How did a primitive chemical rocket destroy a Void ship when our starlight beams could not even touch them? Captain Minho smiled as he prepared to fire another obsolete torpedo. Sole actual to Fleet Command. Obsolete. Package Alpha successful. Target eliminated. Across the battle zone, more human ships began to engage. The EU's Busan launched what looked like a simple kinetic slug from a railgun that appeared to be barely functional. The projectile moved slowly enough that alien sensors could track its entire flight path. When it struck a void ship, the result was the same: complete erasure from reality. The U's Daegu opened fire with weapons that looked like crude plasma cannons. It's a kind of technology that most galactic civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. But when the plasma bolts reached their targets, the void ships did not phase through them as they had with alien weapons. Instead, the dark vessels crumpled like paper being crushed in an invisible fist. Admiral Corvash watched in stunned silence as human ships systematically began destroying the void swarm. His energy form flickered between colors of confusion and disbelief. This is impossible. How are their primitive weapons working when ours failed? Engineer Yunji worked in the depths of the EU's Jeju, her hands moving across controls that looked like mechanical valves and steam gauges. Around her, machinery that appeared to be held together with rust and determination hummed with power that could crack planets. She activated the ship's true defensive systems, the ones that had been hidden for decades. The human fleet's disguise began to shift. It started slowly, almost too subtle to notice. The rust stains on ship hulls began to flow like liquid metal. Welding scars smoothed themselves out as adaptive materials reshaped the exterior plating. What it looked like crude mechanical joints revealed themselves to be flexible metamaterial interfaces. But the most dramatic change was in how the ships moved. The UES Gwangju had been lumbering through space like an ancient cargo hauler, its chemical rockets producing visible flame trails that seemed pathetic compared to exotic alien engines. Suddenly, the ship began moving in ways that violated known physics, not through advanced propulsion, but by manipulating the fundamental forces that held reality together. The vessel slid sideways through space without changing its orientation. It stopped instantly without any deceleration. It moved in directions that should not have been possible in three-dimensional space. The ship was not flying anymore. It was editing its own location in the universe. Captain So Young stood on the bridge of the UES Incheon as her ship shed its disguise like a snake, shedding old skin. The view screen that had looked like a simple, flat display revealed itself to be a window into dimensional spaces that most species could not even imagine. The primitive control panels transformed into quantum interfaces that could rewrite the laws of physics. All ships, she announced over the Heritage Fleet communication channel. You were authorized to drop Project Mirror and engage with full capability. The transformation was breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. Thousands of human ships that had looked like floating scrap metal suddenly revealed their true nature. Hulls that had appeared to be patched together from different materials flowed like liquid mercury, reshaping themselves into forms that were both beautiful and deadly. Weapons that had seemed crude and primitive extended from hidden compartments, their true design so advanced that alien sensors could not even classify what they were looking at. The Heritage Fleet had become something else entirely. These were not the primitive vessels that the galaxy had dismissed for decades. These were weapons of war built by a species that had fought its way from the bottom of a hostile food chain to the stars themselves, the Void Swarm. For the first time since the battle began, seemed to hesitate. Their ships had been moving through the alien fleets like they were not there, phasing in and out of reality to avoid attacks and making enemy vessels simply cease to exist. But the human weapons were different. The quantum deletion torpedoes could track their targets through dimensional phase shifts, so gravity wave cannons could crush them even when they were not fully real. The reality anchors could lock them into normal space where they could be. Destroyed Commander Vextel tried to process what he was seeing. His crystal form flickered rapidly as his mind struggled to understand the implications. The human ships, they are not primitive. They never were primitive. This is technology beyond anything in our databases. Admiral Corvash's energy form shifted to colors that had no names, representing emotions that his species had never felt before. We have been deceived. For decades, we have been looking down on beings who possess capabilities that make our most advanced systems look like toys. The machine collective processed the battle data through multiple quantum cores, trying to understand what they were witnessing. Chancellor Nextar's voice carried something that might have been awe. Human technological signatures are off all known scales. Energy readings that should not be possible. Mass configurations that defy logic. We have been sharing the galaxy with a species that could destroy us all without effort. Captain Minho of the UES Sol targeted another void ship with weapons that no longer pretended to be chemical rockets. The quantum deletion torpedo that emerged from his ship's launcher, like concentrated starlight wrapped in mathematics that could think. When it struck its target, the void vessel did not simply vanish. It was unwritten from reality so completely that the universe forgot it had ever existed. Sol actual to fleet, he reported. Target eliminated. No trace remains in any dimensional layer. Across the battle zone, the tide had turned completely. The void swarm that had been systematically destroying the galaxy's most advanced fleets was now being hunted by ships that appeared to bend reality to their will. Human vessels moved through space like they owned it. Their weapons reaching across impossible distances to touch enemies that thought they were safe in other dimensions. The dark ships began to retreat for the first time since they had emerged from whatever realm had spawned them. But the human fleet was not finished. Engineer Dongmin activated systems that had been hidden so deeply within the ship's structure that even he had not been sure they would work. The UES engine's true nature revealed itself as something that existed in more than 3 dimensions. Its weapons able to fire through time itself to hit targets before they knew they were being attacked. The Heritage Fleet had shed all pretense of being obsolete. These were the ships of a species that had never lost a war. God, they were about to prove why the galaxy was about to learn what humans really meant when they talked about heritage. The Void Swarm was retreating. For the first time since they had emerged from dark space, the shadow ships were pulling back from a battle. But Admiral Jae-sung was not ready to let them go. His flagship, the EU's Gwangju, no longer looked like the ancient cargo hauler it had pretended to be. The ship's true form was something that existed in more dimensions than most species could perceive. Its weapons could reach across space and time to touch enemies that thought they were safe in other realities. Pursuit, course, he ordered. We finished this today. The Heritage Fleet moved as one, no longer hiding behind disguises or pretending to be weak. These ships moved like predators that had finally revealed their true nature. They slid through space in ways that rewrote the laws of physics, peering wherever they needed to be without bothering to travel the distance between the remaining. Void ships tried to escape into the phased dimensions where they had hidden before, but human weapons followed them there, tracking them through layers of reality that other species did not even know existed. Quantum deletion torpedoes erased entire sections of the Void Fleet from existence. Gravity wave cannons crushed ships that were not even fully real. In 30 minutes, it was over. The Void Swarm that had threatened to destroy the galaxy was gone, wiped out so completely that the universe would forget they had ever existed. The silence that followed was deeper than the vacuum of space itself. Commander Vextel was the first to break it. Its crystal form had stopped flickering, frozen in a state of shock that his species had never experienced before. The threat is eliminated. The humans have destroyed an enemy that our combined fleets could not even touch. Admiral Corvash's energy form shifted to colors that represented emotions his people had no words for. We need answers. We need to understand what we have just witnessed. The human fleet began to reassemble in the space where the battle had taken place. As they moved, their ships slowly began to change back to their previous appearance. Hulls flowed like liquid metal, reshaping themselves into the familiar forms of rust-stained, patched-together vessels that looked like they belonged in a museum. But everyone watching knew it was just another costume. Another layer of deception from a species that had been hiding their true nature for decades. Admiral Jae-sung activated the fleet communication system. His voice carried across space to every alien ship that had survived the battle. When he spoke, there was something in his tone that made even the machine collective's robot minds pause to listen. This is Admiral Jae-sung of the Human Heritage Fleet, addressing all galactic forces. The communication channel filled with the voices of alien commanders requesting permission to speak, asking questions, demanding explanations. Jae-sung waited until the chaos died down before continuing. You have questions. I understand that. You want to know how we defeated an enemy that your advanced weapons could not touch? You want to know why our primitive ships were able to succeed, where your sophisticated fleets failed? He paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of alien vessels. The answer is simple. We never showed you our real technology. What you saw as obsolete was camouflage. What you dismissed as primitive was preparation. Captain Soyoung stood on the bridge of the UES engine, watching as her ship completed its transformation back to looking like a piece of floating scrap metal. Around her, the bridge controls had shifted back to appearing like analog switches and mechanical dials, but she could feel the quantum interfaces humming just beneath the surface. For decades, Admiral Jae-sung continued, we have allowed you to believe that humanity was the weakest link in the galactic community. We let you think our ships were crude, our weapons simple, our technology primitive. We did this not because we were ashamed of our capabilities, but because we understood something that you did not. Commander Vextel found his voice. What did you understand? We understood that the greatest weapon is not the one your enemy can see. It is the one they never suspect you have. The truth began to unfold like a map of deception that stretched across decades. Humanity had been conducting the greatest masquerade in galactic history, hiding technologies that made the most advanced civilizations look like children playing with toys. Every human ship that had ever been scanned by alien sensors had been wrapped in holographic disguises, so perfect that even close examination would show exactly what the observers expected to find. Captain Sumin of the UES Jeju activated her ship's demonstration protocols. With Admiral Jae-sung's permission, I will show you what we have been hiding. For exactly 30 seconds, the UES Jeju dropped its disguise completely. The alien sensors that focused on the ship registered readings that broke their understanding of what was possible. Energy signatures that should not have been able to exist. Mass readings that defied every law of physics. Weapon configurations that could crack moons with a thought. The ship's hull became transparent, revealing the true technology hidden within. Fusion reactors that could power entire star systems. Artificial intelligence networks that made the machine collective look like calculators. Weapons that could rewrite reality itself. Manufacturing systems that could build new ships from raw starlight. Then the disguise returned, and the Jeju looked like a rust-stained antique again. The silence stretched across the communication channels like a held breath. Chancellor Nick Starr processed the data through multiple quantum cores. The technological gap between what we believed humans possessed and what they actually possess is beyond calculation. By our measurements, humanity should be capable of conquering the entire galaxy without effort. We could, Admiral Jae-sung replied simply, but we chose not to. Why? Admiral Corvash asked. With such power, why allow yourselves to be treated as primitives? Why hide your capabilities? Ambassador Hyan Wu's voice joined the communication channel from his position aboard a diplomatic vessel that looked like it was held together with wire and hope. Because we learned something from our home world that you never had to learn. We learned that the strongest predator is not always the one that survives. Sometimes it is the one that looks weakest until the moment of truth. The explanation continued, revealing the depth of humanity's long-term strategy. Had not hidden their technology out of fear or shame. They had done it to protect themselves and, ultimately, to protect the galaxy itself. The Heritage Fleet you just witnessed, Admiral Jace Honk explained, is not our most advanced fleet. It is our mercy. It is what we use when we want to solve problems without revealing the true extent of human capabilities. Captain Minho of the EU Sol added his voice to the channel. Our real warships have never been seen by alien eyes. What you witnessed today was us being gentle. The implications sank in slowly across the alien fleets. Humanity had not just been hiding advanced technology. They had been the galaxy's secret guardians for decades, protecting other species from threats they could not even imagine, while allowing themselves to be looked down upon and dismissed. How many times? Commander Vexdal asked quietly. Many threats have you eliminated without us knowing. 47 major extinction-level events, Hyan Wu replied. 17 reality-ending paradoxes. 6 dimensional invasions, and countless smaller problems that could have destroyed individual civilizations. The truth was overwhelming. Species that the galaxy had considered primitive and weak had actually been its greatest protector. Every time a civilization had faced a threat beyond their understanding, humanity had quietly intervened, solved the problem, and then returned to being underestimated. Why reveal this now? Admiral Corvash asked. Admiral Jasung's voice carried the weight of decades of careful planning. 'Cause the void swarm was too large to handle secretly. 'Cause it was time for the galaxy to understand that primitive does not mean weak. And because we are tired of pretending to be less than we are. He paused, letting his words echo across the communication channels. From this day forward, the galaxy will know the truth. Humanity is not the weakest link in the galactic community. We are not primitive. We are not obsolete. We are human, and we have been protecting you while you looked down on us. As the Heritage Fleet prepared to return to human space, alien commanders across the galaxy began to understand that everything they thought they knew about the balance of power had been an illusion. The greatest military force in galactic history had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as museum pieces and antiques. Years later, military academies across the galaxy, a new course would become mandatory for all officer candidates. Students would study the art of strategic deception, learn about the danger of underestimating opponents, and discover why the most dangerous enemy might be the one looks weakest. The course would be called Human Strategic Doctrine, and its first lesson would always be the same. Appearances can be more than deceiving. Sometimes they can be survival itself. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their advanced technology. It was their willingness to be underestimated, until the moment came to show their true strength, and that moment had finally come.